In a nutshell, what is budget? Budget is basically a clear picture which the government of the day presents it to the parliament. Clear picture about its financial health. How much revenue is coming to us, means incoming revenue. What is the expenditure done by us? Obviously, in India, expenditure is more than the revenue. There is always this fiscal deficit which is there. So to fill that fiscal deficit, how much borrowings we have taken from where? And where have these borrowings been invested? So budget gives a clear picture about this. How much is coming to the government, how much is going, where it is going, and how much borrowings have been done by the government in the previous year. And budget also includes what are the plans for the upcoming financial year. Last year, this happened. Next year, these are the allocations. This much amount will be allocated to this sector. So this all is there in the budget. Then revenue comes through taxation to the government, and fees and all is also part of revenue, but major revenue of the government comes from taxes. So any reforms in the taxes if the government has done, that is also part of the budget because that is going to impact the revenue of the government. So this is what a budget is all about. This year, that is an election year, 2024, budget is released in two phases. First, in February, which is called as the interim budget, which is tabled by the outgoing government to meet the finances or to, keep the country running till the new government is formed. So that interim budget is for that particular period only. And when a new government is formed, then a full-scale budget is tabled by the government, like which has been done by the finance minister day before yesterday. Else, in non-election years, you have only one budget tabled in a year. That will happen in February. That is the frequency of budgets being tabled. So in an election year, two budgets are tabled. In a non-election year, only one budget is tabled. Once the budget is tabled, debates and discussions do happen in the parliament, voting is done on the budget. It is said that if the government fails to pass this budget in the parliament, the government should resign. Because simple majority is required. And for forming the government also simple majority is required. Simple majority means 50% plus one of the seats with you. It clearly highlights that if the members of your government are not in support of this budget, you should not form the government. But that is a different thing which you will learn in polity. Talking about this particular budget, Nirmala Sitharaman has become the first finance minister in the history of India to table 7 consecutive budgets. Earlier, this record was held by Morarji Desai, who tabled 6 consecutive budgets. She became the finance minister in 2019. So 2 budgets in 2019 she tabled, then one budget each from 2020 till 2023. 2 budgets again in 2024 she tabled. So likewise, she has this record in her name as of now. Take care. So let us look at the details of the budget which has been tabled by her. So here Nirmala Sitharaman tabled it. This was the 7th consecutive budget, surpasses the record of 6 consecutive budgets presented by late Morarji Desai. Okay. Constitutional provisions with respect to the budget. What are the constitutional provisions? This also we have discussed. It is mentioned as the annual financial statement according to Article 112 of the Constitution. Budget is a statement covering estimated expenditure and receipts for the government of India in a financial year. Expenditure receipts, as I told you. Other than that, budget contains estimated revenue and capital receipts. Capital receipts are, capital का मतलब क्या होता है? What does capital mean? Any investment which is done with the motive of making more money out of that investment. That is capital. I had money, I bought this laptop. With this objective ki bhai, I will use this laptop to deliver online classes, to make content for the classes which I will deliver. That will be a capital investment for me. And on the other hand, if I would have brought this laptop with this objective of watching OTT platforms, playing games, this would have been a consumer product for me. That would have been a consumption expenditure for me. I'm consuming it. So capital receipts means those loans taken by the government and then invested by the government with this objective of earning more revenue out of it. That is capital receipts by the government. Ways to increase revenues, details for receipts and expenditures of the closing financial year which has gone by. All these are there in the budget. And economic and financial policy of the upcoming year is also mentioned or highlighted in the budget. Now, from 1921 till 2016, there were two budgets tabled. One was the railway budget and one was the general budget. This was on the recommendations of Attlee Committee formed by the Britishers in 1920, which recommended कि railway budget separate करो, general budget separate होना चाहिए. But the government in 2016 merged these together, railway and general budget. Now only one budget is tabled. ठीक है? Separated in 1921, but now merged again in 2016. The reason given by the government was that they wanted to give up on the colonial practices which are there in the country. This was one such colonial practice which was there in the country. एक से भी काम चलता है. It was like this. In 2016, Modi government merged the railway budget to the general budget and scrapped the 92-year-old practices. So it was like this. Now the budget estimates which have been tabled by her. Total receipts 32.07 lakh crore of the government in the last year. Total expenditure 48.21 lakh crore. Expenditure is more than the receipts, you can see. There will be a deficit. That deficit is called as fiscal deficit. Net tax receipts 25.83 lakh crore. Out of 32.07 lakh crore rupees, 25.83 lakh crore have come from taxes. ठीक है, apart from taxes, there are other revenues of the government like fees वगैरह हो गया, like you go to make passport, so you pay fees to the government. So all these fees are also there. Fiscal deficit estimated 4.9% of the GDP. There was a law passed by the government in 2003. That law was called as FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act. According to this law, the fiscal deficit had to be brought down to 3%. वो आता हुआ नहीं दिख रहा है अभी. In COVID years, this went up to 9%, 9 to 10% of the GDP. Because there, the incomes of the government reduced and expenditure increased a lot. So this fiscal deficit was too high. And that was natural for every government in the world. Okay. Borrowings, gross 14.01 lakh crore rupees, net 11.63 lakh crore rupees. So what is this gross borrowing and net borrowing? Gross borrowing, in total, how much did we borrow? 14.01 lakh crore rupees we borrowed to fill that gap of deficit. But we might have given certain loans to other governments or other countries. So if I cancel those loans which government of India gave to other countries, then the figure comes out to be 11.63 crore. That is net. Gross हमने इतना लिया. ठीक है? So it is like this. Overview of the budget. Economic context. This budget actually said कि भाई, despite global uncertainties, there are a lot of global uncertainties happening right now. Economies are struggling. because of the war, Russia-Ukraine war, then Israel-Palestine war, earlier due to COVID. India remains as a standout in economic growth. India is the fastest growing large economy of the world for the third or fourth consecutive year. Yeah. Okay, so economic growth has been maintained. Inflation is stable. Now there is a target for inflation in India. Inflation's target is 4 plus minus 2% as set by RBI, which means inflation can be between 2 to 6%. Okay, 4 plus minus 2 is 2 to 6%. This bracket inflation should be in. Presently, inflation is somewhere around 5%. Moving towards 4% it is. 4% is ideal. Itna inflation hona chahiye. It should be there. If there is no inflation, then that is also a bad sign. Okay. Growth will not happen. So it is like this. Interim budget recap. When we tabled the interim budget in February, there was focus on 4 groups of people. First was Garib, poor, Mahilaएं, that is women, Yuva, that is youth, and Annadata, that is farmers. The focus on these 4 categories have translated into this particular budget also. Budget theme emphasizes employment, skilling, MSMEs, and middle class welfare. We have tried to give this benefit to all these groups of people. Aims to enhance productivity and resilience across various sectors. Now, after this slide, we will see that how the focus on Yuva, Annadata, Garib, Mahilaएं has been there, and how we have tried to, focus on employment generation, skilling, or MSMEs and middle class. There were 9 key priority areas outlined in the budget. First was productivity and resilience in agriculture, Annadata, farmers. Resilience simply means that whatever happens in the environment, agriculture should not be impacted. Climate change is impacting agriculture. Crop losses are there. Crop yields, they reduce due to climate change. Heat waves come, to bhai wheat crops get destroyed. Floods come, to bhai crops get destroyed. And these disasters are coming due to climate change only. So that should be tackled. Our agriculture should be made resilient of all these things. Employment and skilling. We're talking about employment generation. So you might have heard ki bhai, for 1 crore youth, internship has been announced. 5,000 rupees per month the government will give you, and 6,000 rupees upfront cost the government will give you. But that is for a few months only. If you are actually worthy, then you will be retained by the employer. Else you will not be. Don't be of this particular viewpoint कि भाई घर बैठे आराम से सब कुछ मिले या काम ना करके पैसा मिले. You have to be productive. You have to be of some worth. Then only you will be given money. Else, if you are crying that I don't have a job, I don't have a job, government has done nothing for employment generation, what have you done for yourself? Have you upskilled yourself? Are you capable enough for the job? Those who are capable enough are earning very good these days in India. The per capita income of India has been rising. Politics is all about perception, you see. If you believe the story of opposition, you will say ki bhai India is struggling. If you believe the story of government, you will say bhai unemployment rate is at an all-time low. There's a survey, that is periodic labor force survey, released by the government. That survey tells us about unemployment rate, worker participation ratio, and labor force participation rate. According to that survey, which is the most accepted survey in India, the unemployment rate in India is 3%, lowest. But still, a lot of people are crying कि unemployment है, बेरोजगारी है, ये है, वो है. But the thing is, if you are capable enough, if you are skilled enough, you have the jobs to do, ample jobs to do. Inclusive human resource development and social justice. So we are focusing over here. Manufacturing and services. These 2 sectors have immense potential for employment generation, particularly manufacturing sector. So special focus is here also. Urban development. This needs special focus because urbanization in India is increasing rapidly. 2011 census, we had 31% of India's population living in the urban areas, which is expected to be more than 31% now. Let the census figures come out. We'll be able to evaluate then. But one thing is very sure that the urban population has increased. There has been more rural to urban migration, and there are more problems in the urban areas which have to be tackled. One of the problems you might be seeing these days is waterlogging. Sadly, in an unfortunate incident, one UPSC aspirant who was about to write mains in Patel Nagar was electrocuted and he died day before yesterday. This happened. And this is basically lack of urban planning or negligence of the government, whatever you want to say, you can say. So urban development has to be focused upon if we want sustainable urban development in the country. Energy security. Obviously, we are in energy deficit. We don't have ample energy with us right now. 24-hour electricity is not available everywhere. So we need to secure ourselves. We are 85% dependent upon petroleum resources, means 85% of our oil is imported from other countries. We are only producing 15% of that. So do two things. One, increase the productivity in your country. If you cannot, decrease the dependence on oil by shifting towards EVs, make more and more EVs. Petrol ka jhanjat khatam. So it is like this. Infrastructure development. So this government has done pretty well. 10 lakh crore was the allocation for infrastructure development in the last year's budget, that is 2023 budget. It was increased to 11,11,111 crore rupees in the interim budget, which remains the same in this particular budget. Innovation, research and development. This is where we were lacking a lot. Less than 2% of India's GDP is being invested on research and development, which needs to be somewhere around 3%. If we are not investing ourselves on research and development, we will not be able to develop new technologies. And when we will not be able to develop new technologies, we will be dependent upon the foreign countries ki bhai technology de do, please give us this technology like we have been till now. And then they give us the technology on their terms and conditions, which we have to adhere to. The Prime Minister talks about being Atmanirbhar. This is one such place where we need to be Atmanirbhar right now. We need to increase the allocation of funds over there. Israel is one such country which spends 5% of its GDP on research and development annually. This is the highest. USA invests 2 to 2.5% of its GDP on research and development. In absolute terms, this is the highest. क्योंकि USA का GDP is the highest. China, our neighboring country, a developing country, also invests 2 to 2.5% of its GDP on research and development. If we can't spend this much money on research and development, 3% of our GDP should be invested. We will never become Atmanirbhar. We will never become developed also. At least 2047 will not become developed. We will always be begging for new and new technology. We want other countries to ask from us, not we asking them. That should be the approach. Next generation reforms. In the next generation reforms, we are talking about multiple sectors like banking and all. We'll see what kind of sectors are there. So the details of these 9 sectors. Productivity and resilience in agriculture. How productivity and resilience in agriculture we are going to look into. Introduction of 109 high yielding and climate resilient crop varieties. Means those seeds are climate resilient. ठीक है. अब जैसे climate resilient कैसे बनते हैं? An example. 2022 heat waves came in March. Wheat crop gets cultivated March, April, which is sown in the winters. Wheat is a rabi crop. So wheat likes winters, not summers. But heat waves came, wheat crop was destroyed. Pusa over here in Delhi developed a variety of wheat. That seed, we can sow it early as October. वैसे wheat was sown in November, December. We can sow it as early as October and reap it as early as starting of or mid of February. Heat waves are not coming in February. That is for sure. So climate resilient seed varieties ban gaya. The name of this wheat variety was HR3387, something like this, or HD3387. Okay. Promotion of natural farming for 1 crore farmers. Natural farming is one step ahead of organic farming. Natural farming mein you do not apply anything from the outside. You have animals on the field, they produce cow dung and all, you use them as a fertilizer. You use the seeds from the previous crop which you have grown. You are bringing nothing from outside, no seeds, nothing, everything from inside the fields. Establishment of 10,000 bio input resource centers. Bio input resource centers where biogases and all they are getting generated. Focus on self-sufficiency in pulses and oil seeds, and these are the two, agricultural crops which we are importing a lot. The paradox with pulses is that India is the largest producer, largest consumer, and largest importer of pulses in the world. Despite being the largest producer of pulses, we are the largest importer also. This is the paradox. Because consumption of pulses in India is too high. It is a staple food in the diets of the people, and productivity is not up to that extent. Oil seeds, we are importing a lot of oil seeds, which is producing oils like refined oil and all, which we use in cooking. The government has launched a plan, National Mission for Edible Oil and Oil Palm, and Northeast is going to be the center point of this in the times to come. A lot of you will see edible oil plants over there, and edible oil, I would say, farms over there. Then rollout of digital public infrastructure in agriculture. Digital public infrastructure in agriculture, digitalization of land records, disbursement of subsidies to the farmers, all should be digitalized. So that has to be rolled out. Then employment and skilling, launch of schemes under PM's package for employment and skilling, creation of 5 schemes for youth employment with a 2 lakh crore outlay, enhancement of skilling through new schemes and revision of model skill loan scheme. So these have been done for employment and skilling. Inclusive human resource development and social justice. Social justice is when you are delivering justice to the entire society, when you are making the society inclusive. The expansion of schemes for artisans, self-help groups, SC/ST entrepreneurs and street vendors. These are the most vulnerable sections of the society. Launch of Purvodaya Yojana for development in eastern states and Pradhan Mantri Janjatiya Unnat Gram Abhiyan for tribal communities. So special package for Bihar and all has been announced by the government, for which the government is being criticized. One of the MPs in opposition said that this budget should be renamed as PM Sarkar Bachao Yojana. This was the criticism, but yes, opposition people will criticize only. Manufacturing and services, support for MSMEs, that is micro, small and medium enterprises through financing and credit enhancement measures. Expansion of Mudra loans. Mudra loans were given to the entrepreneurs for doing business. So there were 3 categories in Mudra loans. One was Shishu, one was Kishore, and the third was Tarun. In Shishu, 0 to 50,000 loan was given. In Kishore, 50,000 to 5 lakh loan was given. And in Tarun, 5 lakh to 10 lakh loan was given. The highest amount was 10 lakh as per the Mudra loans. Ab this has been increased to 20 lakh. ठीक है, अब ये हाईएस्ट अमाउंट गवर्नमेंट ने अनाउंस कर दिया, बट दिस कैटेगराइजेशन अब शिशु में कहां से कहां तक आएगा या किशोर में कहां से कहां तक आएगा, दिस हैज टू बी अनाउंस्ड बाय द गवर्नमेंट बिकॉज देयर विल बी चेंजेस इन दिस कैटेगराइजेशन आल्सो. So easy availability of money for doing businesses. Urban development, launch of internship scheme in top companies for youth. This is that point where 5,000 rupees will be given as a stipend to the youth for first 3 months and 6,000 rupees upfront cost will be borne by the government for internship. And it depends on the companies then, based on the performance of the youth, whether they want to retain them or not. Okay. Urban development, PM Awas Yojana Urban 2.0 for housing 1 crore urban poor and middle class families, basically affordable housing scheme. This is for the government. For the rural areas, there is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Rural. Second phase of that was launched way before, 2-3 years ago. Urban ka bach raha tha. Urban's PMAY 2.0 is also launched. Why? Because in urban areas there is more and more population increasing. तो भाई सबसे बड़ा problem urban areas में is housing, because property rates are too high. Okay, so this will help them, middle class and the lower middle class particularly. Promotion of water supply, sanitation and street food hubs under PM Swanidhi. Swanidhi is street vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi. This gave loans to the street vendors, and this scheme was launched after COVID, because during COVID, the street vendors were the ones who were most impacted by that particular pandemic. So government that time also said that we are not going to give anything free of cost to you. You have to work hard. You take loans from us. Those loans will be collateral free. Matlab you don't have to keep anything girbi with us. 10,000 ka loan lo. If you return back that loan, you will become eligible for second tranche, 20,000. If you return that loan, you will become eligible for the third tranche, that is 50,000. We will take interest from you on that loan, but interest was minimal. If you receive transactions from the customers in a digital format, means if you install Paytm, Google Pay or something like this on your street vending cart, then you will get a cashback from the government. तो इस टाइप से ये स्कीम थी, and now this scheme has been successful and government is wanting to extend it. Energy security, launch of PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana is not about that those solar panels will be installed free of cost, muft, in your homes. You will have to invest in that. After you invest in that, you will get it at subsidized prices from the government. After you get those, then the electricity generated from that will be yours. You don't have to pay any electricity bills. Your electricity gets muft over there. That is called as the Suryodaya Yojana. ठीक है. Emphasis on nuclear energy for a sustainable energy mix. The nuclear energy production we have to increase a lot. ठीक है. Infrastructure, allocation of 11,11,111 crore rupees for capital expenditure over the next year. Capital expenditure, roads बना दिए, flyovers बनाए. Once the road is there, economic activity, movement, all will happen. Toll collection will be there. So that is a capital expenditure by the government. Pradhan Mantri Gramin Sadak Yojana and support for irrigation and flood management projects in the rural areas, that has to be done. So अन्नदाता के लिए irrigation is very important. Currently in India, only 40% of the net sown area, let's suppose, is 100 acres in India, on which we do the sowing and grow the crops. Only 40% is having irrigation facilities. 60% of the net sown area in India is rainfall dependent. So we have to increase the reach of irrigation to those areas. Innovation, research and development, establishment of Anusandhan National Research Fund. So last year, I think last year only, the government passed a law, that is National Research Fund Act, NRF Act, which aims to increase the allocation towards research and development. So the government is talking about it in the budget as well. Venture capital fund for space economy. We are now wanting the private players to enter in the space economy as well. So 2022 October was the first time ever when a private space company, Skyroot Aerospace, launched a rocket in India. Before that, it was the prerogative of ISRO only. But that Skyroot Aerospace used the launch pad, the control center of ISRO only. ISRO is facilitating private players to come and participate in space sector. It is important. जैसे USA में SpaceX is there, Elon Musk का है वो, Blue Origin is there, Amazon वाले का है वो. 17 companies are there in USA which are private space agencies. ये बोइंग वालों की भी है, Starlink. It is like this. तो अभी Sunita Williams and one of the astronauts is there in the International Space Station. Starlink spacecraft took them, but there is a breakdown in that Starlink spacecraft and they are not able to get back to Earth. तो ये problem हो रखा है. But yes, this is once a problem, once the problem has come, but space launches and all, they are efficient. private space launches and all, they're efficient. Abhi, last month in India, there was another private space launch. The name of that rocket was Agniban. If you might have read about it in the newspapers or might have heard about it in the news. That Agniban is a rocket which was developed by a private company and it used its own launch pad as well. It became the first private company, private space company in India to launch its own launch pad and launch the satellites in the orbits. It's that rocket or launch vehicle was also its own and launch pad was also its own. So we want to include or increase the participation of private players in the space. Promotion of private sector driven research and innovation. This we have to do. Next generation reforms, the ninth, formulation of economic policy framework for sustainable growth. Sustainable growth is basically environment friendly growth. And here the government has talked about one thing, that is climate finance. I just hold on. A word which was there. Climate finance taxonomy. ये क्या होता है? What is taxonomy? Taxonomy is creating a category, a grouping. Categorization करने को taxonomy कहते हैं. Now the government will categorize those kind of sectors or those industries which are environment friendly, which are doing or generating green products. Like any company is manufacturing solar panels. So bhai, that company will be over here. Categorized as an environment friendly company. More funds can be diverted towards that. Internationally, we have to receive funds. India being a developing country, we are eligible for receiving funds from developed countries for climate finance. So we can divert our funds over there. So India has decided that it will undertake climate finance taxonomy. Many countries like Mexico, Canada, Singapore, Malaysia and all, they have undertaken it. India will also undertake it. Then introduction of NPS Vatsalya and reforms in new pension scheme. NPS Vatsalya is new pension scheme Vatsalya for the kids. My kid is there, 1 year old, just born. I can start investing for him in the NPS Vatsalya account. I can open a NPS Vatsalya account for him. And up till 18 years, I will have to put money regularly in that account. With whatever amount of money I choose to put, I will be putting that. And once that boy or girl turns 18, that money will be transferred to a normal account, which will be that person's account. And that money can be used for marriage or that money can be used for higher education. It is like this. So NPS Vatsalya is a new introduced scheme in this particular budget. Then reforms in new pension schemes. New pension scheme में reforms ये आई हैं कि earlier what used to happen, let's suppose I'm a employee in a private company and I declare that I will be diverting this much portion from my monthly salary to the NPS scheme. Now it will be an obligation on the employer to contribute at least 10% of my basic salary to the NPS scheme. Not at least, but maximum 10% to the NPS account, my NPS account. So that when I retire, I get that amount. That is a social security amount. Now that 10% limit has been increased to 14%. That is the change which has been done to give effect to this. Reforms in new pension scheme. So these were, the reforms or those 9 pillars which the government talked about. Let's talk about taxation reforms and economic policies which happened over there. The Union Budget talked about various taxation reforms. It aims to simplify and rationalize direct taxes. Direct taxes is which is borne directly by the end user or which is borne directly by the consumer. Okay. And indirect taxes are basically borne by the end user. Like you went to buy a chocolate. ठीक है, the chocolate manufacturer, 10 rupees is the cost of the chocolate, 5 rupees is indirect taxes on it. 5 rupees, it sold the chocolate for 15 rupees to the wholesaler from the factory. ठीक है, wholesaler will repay back that 5 rupees to the factory owner. That wholesaler sold that chocolate for 18 rupees to the retailer. 3 rupees taxes on that. That retailer, when it will file the return, 3 rupees will go back to the wholesaler. And that retailer will sell that chocolate to me for 20 rupees. I am the end consumer. So that entire tax from 10 till 20, that is 8 rupees tax, is borne by me, the end user. That is what indirect tax is. Direct tax totally depends on my income. My income is, let's suppose, 1 lakh rupees. Based on my income, I have to pay the tax to the government. Take it. So that is the difference between direct and indirect tax. Aims to simplify and rationalize direct taxes. It increased the standard deduction for salaried employees opting for the new tax regime from 50,000 to 75,000. What is standard deduction? अब क्या होता है कि if I get salary and my my yearly package is, let's suppose, 20 lakh rupees. So when I go to file my income tax return, my CA will ask कि भाई 20 lakh rupees आपके पास, you are getting 20 lakh rupees in a year. So you fall in this tax slab. But wait, there are certain deductions given by the government where the government reduces your income. Earlier, the government was giving standard deduction of 50,000 rupees. Means income tax by me has to be paid on 20 lakh minus 50,000 amount. That is 19.5 lakh amount 19.5 lakh will be the taxable income on which I have to pay the tax. Okay. 75,000, now it has been increased to, now I will have to pay the tax on 19.25 lakh rupees. The standard deduction amount has increased. If the standard deduction amount is increasing, taxable income is reducing. Okay. If the standard deduction amount is increasing, taxable income is reduced. This is the correlation between them. So this standard deductions can be availed by everyone who is paying taxes according to the new tax regime. New tax regime was introduced 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, and it was voluntary. Who wants to opt for the new tax regime, who wants to stay in the old tax regime, it was voluntary. Okay. Similarly, the deduction on family pensions. Now, Divisha has asked a question ki NPS amount, we get it wholly at once or we get it monthly. We have both the options. I invested in NPS throughout my working career. When I become 60, I become eligible to take that amount. It depends upon me whether I want to take the whole amount at once or I want to take it monthly. Totally depends on me. But in whatever format I take, I will be taxed on that. I will have to pay taxes on that if I fall in the taxing bracket. Okay. So there also the standard deduction on family pensions for pensioners was enhanced. 15,000 it was earlier, and now the standard deduction is 25,000 rupees. Okay, means a bit of tax saving can be done over there as well. Okay. So let's suppose I am receiving 7 lakh rupees as the pension amount in a year. My taxable income will become 6,75,000 now, not 7 lakh rupees. Earlier it was 6,85,000. Now it will become 6,75,000. That is it. 100-200 रुपए का फर्क आ जाएगा टैक्स में इससे. Corporate and personal income tax. Over 58% of corporate tax receipts in the previous fiscal came from a simplified tax regime, and this is what the companies want. Simplified tax regime should be there. Entrepreneurship and startups. Budget abolished angel tax across all classes of investors. Now, if you have a startup, so bhai, there are various ways of raising funds. One is angel tax or angel investment. A person comes like an angel, gives you money, beta, you run the business. That person will be called as angel investor. Earlier, angel investors, whatever amount he was investing, had to pay the tax on that investment. अभी गवर्नमेंट ने क्या किया? गवर्नमेंट हैज अबॉलिश्ड एंजल इन्वेस्टमेंट टैक्स. तो एंजल इन्वेस्टर्स को अच्छा लग रहा है. Why the government has done this? Because it wants to increase investments in the startup ecosystem. Ab here I want to highlight one more thing, that the government has abolished angel investment tax. This necessarily will not lead to reduction in the tax income of the government. It can happen कि भाई more investments come in the startup ecosystem. Those startups start to function. They will generate more jobs. More jobs means more income of the people and then more taxes to the government. So any economic activity, taxes to the government will go. If that investment increases, economic activity can increase. That investment will increase because that angel tax has been made zero. It will spur or increase the investment by the angel investors. That investment will lead to more economic activities. More economic activity will lead to more tax collection. It can also be a possibility that it leads to reduced tax collection, because if no economic activity happens, so that is not happening, and investment say tax is also not coming to the government. So that can also happen. Both ways it can happen. Take it. So here one more thing is there, that introduce a simpler tax regime for foreign shipping companies operating domestic cruises and reduce the corporate tax rates for foreign companies from 40% to 35%. So 5% tax relief for the foreign companies. Aim is to invite more and more foreign investment into the country. Indirect taxes and GST. The budget proposed comprehensive rationalization of GST tax structure. More rationalization of GST tax structure has to be done so that the tax base increases. Tax base is how many people are paying GST. That is the tax base. The government wants to rationalize GST so that the tax base for GST increases. And duty rates were also reviewed, further digitalized customs and income tax services. All these were done. Custom duty adjustments. Custom duty is products which are getting imported into India. On that, the government is eligible to levy import duties. Import duties are called as custom duties. So to benefit various sectors, the budget fully exempted 3 cancer treating medicines from custom duties, simply meaning that these cancer medicines will now become cheaper because custom duties अब इस पे लग नहीं रहा. ठीक है. Basic customs duty on X-ray machines, mobile phones, components like printed circuit boards assembly and mobile chargers was also reduced. तो ये भी कम हुआ था. This will be expected to be cheaper now. Those which are getting imported. Basic custom duty on critical minerals like lithium was fully exempted. Lithium is a raw material which is very much instrumental for making batteries for EVs. So that is completely exempted. Import duties on gold, silver, platinum, and specific industrial goods were also lowered. So this is what was there with respect to custom duty adjustments. Capital gains tax. Let's suppose I buy a property this year. That property is worth 10 lakh rupees. After 10 years, I sell this property and I sell it at 20 lakh rupees. So that capital investment made by me is 10 lakh rupees. On that capital investment, I gained some amount, I gained some profit. That is of 10 lakh rupees only, because that property from 10 lakh rupees became 20 lakh rupees. I have to pay the tax to the government on the capital which has gained. That is called as capital gains tax. Okay. So there the government has taken certain steps. The budget revised the capital gains tax structure to provide relief to the lower and middle income classes. Here it is benefiting the middle classes. Short-term gains are less than 2 years or 3 years. Okay. On financial assets now attract a 20% tax rate, while long-term gains on all assets will be 12.5%. This was earlier 15% and this was earlier 22.5 or 25% like this. So that was there. Then dispute resolution. There are a lot of cases increasing of the individuals with respect to tax, and those cases have come in the higher courts of the country. तो पहले से ही बहुत है वहां पे। तो गवर्नमेंट हैज लॉन्च्ड अ स्कीम, विवाद से विश्वास स्कीम 2024, to resolve pending income tax disputes. Monetary limits for appeals related to direct taxes, excise, and service taxes in higher courts were increased, aiming to reduce litigation and provide certainty in tax matters. So, for dispute resolution, also, the government has launched a scheme. A new tax slab was introduced by the government. This is basically the last slide. Old tax regime is like this: 0.2.5 lakh. If you have this income, you don't have to pay any taxes. If your income is 2.5 to 5 lakh, you have to pay 5%. 5 to 10 lakh, you have to pay 20%, and above 10 lakh, you have to pay 30%. This was the old tax regime. New tax regime, which was introduced a few years ago: 0.20 to 2.5 lakh, nil; 2.5 to 5, 5%; 5 to 7.5, 10%; 7.5 to 10, 15; 20, 25, and above 15 lakh, 30%. There has been some changes made in this tax slab. This was the tax slab of the new tax regime. This is an updated tax slab of the new tax regime. 0 to 3 lakh, here is a change. Here was 2.5, here is 0.0 to 3 lakh, nil. 3 to 6 lakh, 5%. Here it was 2.5 to 5%. 6 to 9 lakh, 10%. Here 5 to 7.5 lakh, 10%. 9 to 12 lakh, 15%. Here we have 7.5 to 10 lakh, 15%. 12 to 15 lakh, 20%. Here we had 10 to 12.5 lakh, 20%. And above 15 lakh, 30%. Here we had above 15 lakh, 30%, but 12.5 to 15 lakh was 25%. This is missing over here. ठीक है, 20 से सीधा 30 पे जंप हो रहा है. This is the new tax slab introduced in this budget. ठीक है. However, questions are less likely to be there from this particular tax slab wala thing. So conclusion is, was there something for the middle class? Yes, but middle class is always hungry for more. So it was not there also. Middle class wanted ki bhi capital gains tax should be removed completely, but practically that is not possible. Was there a lot for the rural areas? Yes. Urban areas? Yes. Women? Yes. Entrepreneurship and skilling, employment generation? Yes. But let us see how the government implements this over the year. The key lies in implementation. You can talk a lot. कथनी और करनी में फर्क होता है. The government should focus on doing it, implementing it. That is what we need to conclude with this budget.